Halito, and welcome to Native ChocTalk, a podcast by natives for all. Here we're keeping our Native ancestors' stories and history alive, while also sharing with you our Native culture, traditions, and more. I'm Rachel Youngman, a Choctaw originally from Anadarko, Oklahoma. I hope you'll enjoy this journey with me as we learn from our Native American guests. And I hope you'll do me a favor. Feel free to like and share these episodes. I so appreciate it. Yakoki.
I am more than a maker.
I'm more than an outdoorsman.
More than a protector.
Than a graduate.
Than a princess.
An athlete.
A pastor.
I'm more than a warrior.
Chata ilifinachili.
Chata ilifi nachili.
I am Choctaw proud.
I am Choctaw proud.
I am Choctaw proud.
We are the Choctaw Nation, and together we're more.
I remember growing up and being homeschooled in our house on the hill in Hog Creek, just outside of Anadarko, Oklahoma. And each day we would listen to Paul Harvey sharing the latest news on the radio, followed by his heartwarming stories. He always began his program with the iconic greeting, "Hello, Americans. This is Paul Harvey. Stand by for news." He was an excellent storyteller, embodying the very essence of America. He seemed to represent the hardworking, salt of the earth people, those who served our country with honor, and those who toiled on the land with their hands, putting in relentless effort and determination to produce the food that nourishes our families. Throughout my lifetime, I've been inspired by my family members who have dedicated their lives to serving in the military, as well as farming and ranching. My heart is with those who do. Several of my relatives have tilled the soil of our Native ancestors' land allotments, land that remains in our family to this day. I deeply admire their determination, perseverance, and the immense hard work they undertake. One such example is my Chickasaw uncle named Lloyd, who's always been known to hold a cowboy hat on his head and balance a toothpick in his mouth, all while telling the best stories. I took a quick drive from my home in Chickasha to his farm and home in Washington, Oklahoma. These areas are Chickasaw country. I wanted to learn more about his farming, tending to his ancestral land allotments, and his service to our country. Few have captured the dedication of these hardworking individuals like my Uncle Lloyd better than Paul Harvey, whose iconic speech, "So God Made a Farmer," delivered at the Future Farmers of America Convention in November 1978 in Kansas City, Missouri, remains an important tribute. Take a listen, and I hope you'll enjoy also hearing about Uncle Lloyd's contribution to the world, from his military service to working on first-generation IBM mainframes to tending to cattle and crops.
God looked down on his planned paradise and said, "I need a caretaker." So God made a farmer. God said, "I need somebody willing to get up before dawn, milk cows, work all day in the fields, milk cows again, eat supper, then go to town and stay past midnight at a meeting of the school board." So God made a farmer. "I need somebody with arms strong enough to wrestle a calf and yet gentle enough to deliver his own grandchild. Somebody to call hogs, tame cantankerous machinery, come home hungry, have to wait lunch until his wife's done feeding visiting ladies, then tell the ladies to be sure and come back real soon and mean it." So God made a farmer. God said, "I need somebody willing to sit up all night with a newborn colt and watch it die, then dry his eyes and say, maybe next year. I need somebody who can shape an axe handle from a persimmon sprout, shoe a horse with a hunk of car tire, who can make harness out of hay, wire, feed sacks, and shoe scraps, who planting time and harvest season will finish his 40-hour week by Tuesday noon, and then painin' from tractor back put in another 72 hours. So God made a farmer. God had to have somebody willing to ride the ruts at double speed to get the hay in ahead of the rain clouds and yet stop in midfield and race to help when he sees the first smoke from a neighbor's place. So God made a farmer. God said, "I need somebody strong enough to clear trees and heave bales, yet gentle enough to yean lambs and wean pigs and tend to pink-combed pullets, who will stop his mower for an hour to splint the broken leg of a meadowlark It had to be somebody who'd plow deep and straight and not cut corners. Somebody to seed, weed, feed, breed, and rake and disc and plow and plant and tie the fleece and strain the milk and replenish the self-feeder and finish a hard week's work with a 5-mile drive to church. Somebody who'd bail a family together with the soft, strong bonds of sharing, who would laugh and then sigh and then reply with smiling eyes when his son says that he wants to spend his life doing what Dad does. So God made a farmer.
Uncle Lloyd, thanks for taking the time today to visit with me. This is truly such a pleasure, something I've been waiting for a long time, and I can't wait to hear about your ancestral stories as well as your own stories. Now, you are Chickasaw, correct?
I'm 1/4 Chickasaw.
1/4 Chickasaw. So today we'll talk about the interesting life you've led, and we'll get to hear about your ancestors and their stories too. So listeners, my mama's sister's name is Mona, and she's married to my Uncle Lloyd. And y'all live in Washington, Oklahoma, in what is one of the most peaceful slices of heaven, y'all. It is beautiful there. And last time I left your house, I drove down the road and I took pictures of the sunset going over your land, and it was just beautiful. So we'll talk more about your place in Washington in just a bit, but let's first start with your own story. Where did you grow up?
I was born and raised in Pauls Valley, Oklahoma, which is a small town about 45 or 50 miles south of Oklahoma City. It's located on Interstate Highway 35.
I actually didn't know you grew up there.
Yes.
How funny is that? What's your earliest memory, Uncle Lloyd?
The very, very, very earliest memory that I had was when I was about 2.5, 3 years old, and that was going with my mother from our house about a couple city blocks to a spring that had water in it. It was a water spring.
Okay.
To get soft water. And,
really?
And of course, I hung on to her skirt.
Right.
But anyway, that's the very earliest that I
really.
Yeah. And then after that, when I was about 3 years old, I had double pneumonia, and I was in the hospital. And thank goodness the Lord watched over me and let me survive.
Double pneumonia is no joke.
But I was about 3 years old, man.
Wow, that is an early memory.
I can also remember after I came home from the hospital, there was a doctor that took care of me, and they made home visits all the time back then.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about 1940.
Okay.
Is a time span. And the doctor's name was Dr. Holman. He later built a very nice hospital in Pauls Valley. But when he would come to give me an injection of antibiotic or whatever it was that he gave me, he would bring a orange or grape or strawberry. We call them soda pops. They're soft drinks.
Right.
And if I didn't cry when he gave me the shot, I got the soft drink. So that's
I love that incentive. So when you were talking about the spring, when you would go to gather the water, was there no running water in your house at the time?
I'm thinking that they had a well at the time. I know the place that we moved to from there when I was about 3 years old or 4 did not have running water. The city had not put in a city water system.
Okay.
Where we lived out there, and I think the other place we didn't have water either.
Yeah. What about electricity?
And electricity,
okay. Yeah, it's my last guest and I were talking about the fact that they didn't have electricity or running water, and they had dirt floors, and that's just my generation to his. It's not that much of a difference. So
my sister lived in a place that I recall that had dirt floor, and
really,
and she'd sweep it with a broom just like a regular floor. But I'm sure it didn't have electricity either.
That must be just an unforgiving task. Like you never get it clean. So what was it like where you lived?
Well, we were poor people, and the first place we lived where I remember the most was where we lived when I had come home from the pneumonia episode. And we lived in a duplex with a family. The family was named Barnes.
Okay.
The lady, I always referred her as Miss Barnes. And she
Barnes.
had a daughter named Lizzie and a son named Lindsay, and then an older son named Carney Barnes.
How do you remember all this?
Well, they were good people.
I can barely remember what I did yesterday. You remember the people living in the duplex?
We lived in a duplex, which we call a duplex today. It was one house that had two separate areas to live in.
Yeah.
It was not plumbed with bathroom or running water. That's or I don't remember it having natural gas either.
Yeah.
But it had an outhouse where you went.
I was going to say that means there was an outhouse in this situation.
And but we lived there. My dad, he had a little sawmill. He was a local trucker, just a small trucker that hauled furniture and feed and grain and hay and just whatever he could get to haul. But he had a sawmill that he brought logs in and cut up lumber, and I remember that while we lived there. We moved from there across the street into a house that we lived in for until 1949. And that house, all it had was electricity. It
still no running water.
No running water, and we had our heat source and the fuel source for our kitchen stove was either coal or wood. We did not have gas, and those were tough times. But back then they were common times.
Yeah,
a lot of people had that. We were poor people, and we didn't live in the upscale edition of town, but we were a small family, and we made do.
That's right. Now you got to tell me about the outhouse situation.
You don't want to know about that. The spiders and smell, and it wasn't. It wasn't nice. A little bit later on, after we moved across the road to what I'll refer to as the Rock House, it was actually a concrete block house, is what it was. Many stories about that house that my mom, I'd hear her talk about ghosts being in that house, and
really
telling stories about little babies dying there, and they're just all made up stuff. I mean, she thought they was real. I think I don't know where she got that in.
Yeah,
it scared me to death. I could not hardly go to sleep at night, and she didn't realize what she was doing. She's just relating stories, but.
That sounds like me and my sisters. We scared our kids sometimes telling them scary stories. What are some of the fun memories that you have from childhood?
The fun memories is the local kids that I played with. I'm talking back 4, 5, 6 up to about 12 years old.
Yeah.
After I got to be a teenager, it's a whole other game. But we didn't have money to buy toys with. I had a stick horse that I rode, and that was a broom handle. If I could find one, and if I couldn't find one, they had some big weed sticks. I don't know the name of the weed, but it was big enough that I could straddle and ride they call
like a
them
real
stick
cowboy.
Horses. People don't know what that is today. Some of these people watching this may know, but
yes.
But and then I would make out of blocks of wood and nail and a hammer make me some trucks.
Yeah.
My dad later on in his trucking life, he became a house mover. He moved houses, not mobile homes, but houses.
Right.
And I, as a little kid, I would build me equipment to look like his out of wood.
Really?
and play out in the sand and whatnot. I remember playing with neighbor kids. We, no one was afraid back in those days of people kidnapping you and bullies coming along and hurting you and people calling you bad names and all of that. You just played and had fun, and I could go out and play with the kids under a street light and until, man, I thought it was wee hours, but it must have been 30 minutes or so past
Sure.
sundown. But those are some of the memories that I have.
I love that. We'll be back after this quick break. Are you in the medical field looking for your next opportunity? Listeners, I'm proud to introduce you to Native American veteran-owned staffing company, Worldwide Medical Staffing. Owner and CEO Jackson Weaver is a citizen of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma and is a service-connected disabled veteran, where he and his team staff for commercial healthcare and government entities such as the Department of Defense, Department of Energy, and DHS, and specialize in staffing Indian Health and VA hospitals nationwide. Isn't it nice to know that our veterans are being cared for by staff who have been handpicked by a veteran who's been in the staffing business for 17 years? Healthcare job seekers, check out these open jobs on www.medical.com. If you're seeking temporary, long-term, or permanent placement of physicians, advanced practice, registered nurses, and more, check out www.medical.com. And Yako Ki to our medical professionals and to those who have served our country. And it sounds like you lived in a safe community where people cared about each other, right?
Well, when I was a little bit later on, I walked to grade school, which was in the city limits. It was a school called Jefferson, and it was about 3 blocks from where we lived. And as a little kid, like 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, we could go up there and play on seesaws, Peter Totters, and swings and merry-go-rounds, everything, just things kids playing on after school and on the weekends. And never had parents never had to worry about what we said. We just go and play and come back.
So much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I was about, I don't know, 4 years old, maybe, I was with my dad, and he was helping some acquaintance bale hay, and that's a whole other story I don't want to get into. But I did fall, and I thought I'd broke an arm or something, and Dad, of course, he rubbed my arm and made me feel better.
Oh, I love that.
But anyway, I cried and got over that. But the first real hurt that I recall, I was maybe in the 4th or 5th grade, might have been in the 6th grade, riding a bicycle, and there was a group of us riding a bicycle, and I don't think I had a bicycle at the time, so I must have been in about the 3rd grade.
Mm-hmm.
And like I say, there was many bicycles there, and I was riding on the back, on a carrier on the back of a bicycle, and somebody got close to me, and I got my heel caught in the spokes of the bike, and it cut my heel real bad, and like I never healed. I doctored it and doctored it and doctored it, or my mom did. And finally, in the summertime, we went to California, and my aunt lived at Ventura, California, which is close to the ocean. And we went down to the ocean one day, and I waded in the water, and it healed my it healed my heel. When I was 4 years old, on my mom's allotted land, Chickasaw allotted land. My dad was up there, and we lived in Paul's Valley, and she rented out the land to somebody, a neighbor up in that area that wanted to, and they lived in the house, and so they built a new porch for the house.
Right.
And I was out there playing on the porch that they were building, and a fella had wasn't a hammer, it was a hatchet that had a hammer head on it, but it had a blade on it.
Right.
and it come off the handle, and that blade hit me right across here, and the scars were. You can't see them. You can't see them now, but they was there right.
Maybe that one.
Right there's one right there.
Oh my goodness.
And but I could see them for many years. But that's
You'll
another
always
reason.
remember that too. Now you mentioned that your dad used to move houses. Do you remember much about that?
Oh, I remember a lot about that.
Really?
I that's what I grew up knowing what to do. It's move houses, and I went through grade school and high school, and he passed away in 1969, and I moved houses. I did not hold a job of any kind. I moved a house. I mean, I worked with him in the house moving out around school and whatnot, but I knew how to drive a truck way young.
I bet.
And I could handle. When I was 13 years old, they worked me like a man and paid me like a man.
I was going to ask if you got paid.
I did. I made $5 a day.
Hard work too.
That was what was being paid for labor back in those days.
What'd you spend your money on?
The story about that was I let my mom keep my money for me, and I never saw it. And she, I'd ask for it. She said, "You remember that coat? You remember them shoes? That you got? That was her."
You're paying for your room and board.
Yeah, and I learned later, to find some other place to keep my money. What little I had.
Don't give it to mom.
Yeah,
because mom's gonna spend it on your expenses. Oh, that's funny. So did you help around the house with chores and such?
The chores I helped with was I cut kindling, brought in firewood, brought in coal to burn in our heater, and primarily in our cook stove, which was a huge cast iron stove that had a water compartment on it that the stove kept the water warm. It called a water warmer.
Yeah.
And but the fuel was primarily lumber that was cut up into small sticks. It would burn good, and but that's what we had until about it might have been 1948 or 47, and then we got a kerosene cook stove.
Ooh.
That was state of the art for people that didn't have natural gas, and
right.
And it left the smell of kerosene in the house real bad, but it was nice.
Yes. I can almost picture your house, and it must have been well. Actually, I should ask you. Probably, did it stay warm in the winter, and was it cool enough in the summer?
The concrete block house, which I call the rock house, it of course didn't have any insulation in it. It had 9-foot ceilings in it, and it stayed cold in the winter, and it stayed hot in the summer. And we did not have any kind of air conditioning, any kind of fan or anything. When it got hot, we just went out and got under a shade tree, and that was it.
Yeah. What about nighttime? Did you sleep outside or?
Yes.
Okay.
On them hot nights, we had a wrought iron bed with the old wire springs.
Yeah.
Springs.
Yeah.
And then we'd carry a cotton mattress. I didn't carry it, but my dad would carry it out there and put it, make a bed with that, and then if it looked like rain, we'd roll it up and bring it to the house, but leave everything that was metal out there.
Yeah, you just left it outside. I mean, for people who have not been to Oklahoma, it gets very, very hot here during the summer. I mean, it's like a dry heat most of the time. And then in the winter, people think it doesn't get cold here, but it actually does. And there's also wind, and when the wind is with the cold, it can get pretty chilly. So.
The heater, if you want to get warm, you could stand right next to that heater and it would blister you. But you got a little ways from and the back, the side toward the the heater would be hot and the other side would be freezing.
Oh, it's like you can only warm one side at the time.
Yeah.
So were you immersed in the Chickasaw culture at all growing up?
No, other than knowing my grandmother, who was full blood Chickasaw.
Okay.
But she didn't espouse the culture at all.
Did she speak Chickasaw?
I'm sure she did. I never heard her. She spoke good English, and she was elderly when I come along. She passed away at about 71 or 72 age, and I only knew her for 9 years from the time I was born until she passed away.
Oh, yeah.
But I remember her well. She spoke with real good English, but with a Native American
kind of an accent. Oh, okay.
I don't remember any stories that she told about her upbringing.
Yeah.
I don't remember any my mom told. My dad on his side of the family. What little I know, and we're going to talk about today, is information that my wife has dug up through ancestral research, graveyard researches, newspapers, things of that nature.
Yeah, Mona is the genealogist of the family, and I'm so grateful for that, because when I go onto ancestry.com for my own family, I'm immediately matched with tons of my relatives on that side of the family. So what were your mom and dad's names?
My mother's name was Roxy May, maiden name Dunnigan, Aiken. And my dad's name was Walter Lee, had a nickname Buck.
I have that Roxy was born in Indian Territory, now Oklahoma, in 1904 and was Chickasaw. Let's follow that Chickasaw lineage just a bit. Tell us about your mom. Where did she grow up?
She was born in Tishomingo in 1904, and her granddad passed away in 1907, and my mother's family, her mother and dad, they moved to 3.5 miles south of Wayne, Oklahoma.
Really?
And where they had a lot of land there. And just a little bit later on, my mom received an allotment of land where we live now, which is 7.5 miles west of Purcell, Oklahoma, off Highway 39. And the family moved her there, and that's where she was raised, actually.
Yeah.
She went to school there. They had a little local one-room school in an area called Whitty Chapel, and school and church was the same building. There was an Indian family, Chickasaw Indian family named Woody, and there was a store there and a church, and that's how it got its name.
Were there a lot of Chickasaws there at the time, you think?
There was Chickasaws everywhere around there. The allotted lands were given out. I guess all the Chickasaw lands were allotted to somebody, to the population.
So what was Roxy like?
She was 5'2", and
she's little,
and never did. Maybe 5'1". She wasn't real tall, and she wasn't ever real heavy set. She was healthy looking, but she was fiercely independent in my way. And she was a disciplinarian in our family. My dad was easygoing, and there was a lot of difference in him. And my mom would swat me sometimes, and I said, "What'd you do that for?" And she'd say, "You done such and such." I said, "Mom, I didn't do that." And she said, "Well, you got away with so much stuff, it didn't matter anyway."
I'm making up for whatever else you did or will do. That's so
But she was real independent, and she would challenge anybody on any issue. She's pretty strong-headed.
Chickasaws have a matriarchal society too, right? So
I don't know, but
I think so. And so she was probably strong and in charge. So was she the one that you said you'd hold on to her skirt as you'd go down and get some water? That's such a sweet memory.
Yeah, and also I remember doing the same thing out on I guess during the same time when we were downtown. Say on a Saturday, everybody go to town. The town be full of people on Saturday.
Fun. That's great.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. Stay tuned for part 2 coming up. Thanks for listening to Native ChocTalk. Be sure to join our community on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and check us out at nativechoctalk.com. Stay tuned for the next episode. You're going to love it. Yakoki. Thank you, my friends.